Shalom, friends. Today I am super excited to get to do a text deep dive about something I don't do a lot of right now, but I used to do a lot of when I was an Orthodox person, and that is pray. We're going to talk about prayer. Why do Jews pray the way that we do? Because of a woman. That's right, the prophetess Chana. Now, who will be our guide on this text learning quest? Sass Brown. Sass, shalom.
Hey y'all, I'm Sass. I am a rabbinical student and also a rabbinic intern at Ammud, Jews of Color Torah Academy. I'm going to be sharing a little bit about our organization while we're studying. And I'm also bringing perspective as an Iraqi Jew with family, like both from Baghdad and also moving through East Asia and some of the traditions that we got going on there.
So let's, I guess, begin in the beginning-ish. Let's start from the Tanach. What is Chana's story there?
In the first chapter of the book of Samuel, we meet Chana. And Chana is a woman who is struggling to get pregnant, and she really, really wants a son. Pregnancy struggles are a common motif in the Tanakh, and the woman is often blamed for the infertility. But in this case, Chana decides to take things into her own hands. She goes to this sacrificial site at Shiloh, and she's going to ask Hashem for a son. Along the way, she manages to invent a whole new method of prayer. She talks back to the priest and the governing judge of the people, and she also attempts to directly manipulate God into giving her what she wants. So we're going to look at the rabbinic texts that examine this moment and what the rabbis do learn from Chana, and also what they don't learn that we're going to suggest maybe they could have or we still could learn from her story.
Okay, so this text is Brachot 31a. So this is like, for anybody who does the daf, this was way back at the dawn of the Daf Yomi cycle, only 31 pages in, 5 years ago. It begins like this. Rav Hamnuna said, how many significant halachot laws can be derived from these verses of the prayer of Chana? As it says, and Chana spoke in her heart, only her lips moved and her voice could not be heard. So Eli thought her to be drunk. So Eli is making some assumptions here, and we know what making assumptions is good for, nothing. The Gemara elaborates, from that which is stated here, and Chana spoke in her heart. The halacha that one who prays must focus his heart on his prayer is derived. And from that which is stated here, only her lips moved. The halacha that one who prays must enunciate the words with his lips, not only contemplate them in his heart, is derived. From that which is written here, and her voice could not be heard, the halacha that one is forbidden to raise his voice in his Amidah prayer, as it must be recited silently. From the continuation of the verse here, so Eli thought her to be drunk. The halacha that a drunk person is forbidden to pray. That is why he rebuked her. So we've got a lot to unpack here. I think anybody who may have been in a Jewish prayer space knows that there are times which you don't hear the prayers out loud, but you see people's lips moving, and that comes from here. But we're also learning a lot of halachot, a lot of laws that are derived other than that, such as like a drunk person is forbidden to pray.
We got those prayer lessons, and now they're going to move on to some like interpersonal lessons, and they start, Eli, the priest, rebukes Chana because he thinks she's drunk, and he literally says, like, how long are you going to be drunk for? And Rabbi Elazar learns from this that if you see someone in public acting inappropriately, you're supposed to reprimand them. You're supposed to tell them off. But then Chana answers and says, no, my master, I'm not drunk, right? I'm just praying. Hello, this is what prayer looks like, except Chana just invented it. The priest doesn't even know about this. It's her thing. And so Ula learns from this, and some say it was Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Chanina, that she says back to Eli, to the priest, with this regard, when it comes to prayer, you are not a master. And the Ruach HaKodesh, the divine spirit, doesn't rest with you because you falsely suspect me of being drunk in public.
And she's saying, I'm not pouring wine, I'm pouring out my soul before God, okay? This is a convo between me and God, and you're interrupting.
And I think there's even there's that attempt by Rabbi Elazar to say that you should reprimand people, and then it's almost like the Gemara is talking back to him also, being like, actually, Chana was right, and she's willing to say that the person in charge of the entire religion isn't a master of prayer. Like, she actually knows what's going on.
What a call out in that context, especially. So now we're moving on. The sages are taking this conversation a little bit further, and some say, another version of her response. She said to him, questioning, aren't you a master? Aren't the divine presence and the divine spirit with you that you judged me to be guilty and you did not judge me to be innocent? Didn't you know I'm a woman of distressed spirit? People, leave the women in distressed spirit alone.
And also, okay, just because the divine presence isn't with you, maybe have some common sense.
Right. Just basic human decency. Try that.
We're going to skip a little bit down the daf to this place where the rabbis say not only did Chana invent this way of praying while talking back to Eli the priest, but she also invented a name for God. There are a lot of names for God in the Torah and in Jewish text, and Adonai Tzvaot, often translated as Lord of Hosts, they say she's the first one. So it says, and she swore an oath and said, Adonai Tzvaot, Lord of Hosts, look upon my affliction, your maidservant, and remember me. Do not forget me, and give me a son. This is what she's asking for. Rabbi Elazar says, from the day that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that God created the world, there was not one person who called God Adonai Tzvaot until Chana did.
She was really, really a trailblazer.
Even a little further down the daf, this takes just a tiny bit of explanation. There's a ritual in the Torah called the Sota, and it's for when a husband thinks that his wife has cheated on him and he's going to publicly accuse her, and there's a trial where she has to drink this odd potion, and it's supposed to discern whether she is actually guilty of what she's being accused of. But the important thing for this is that if it turns out she's innocent, the Torah says that they believed at the time that she would then conceive and she would have a son inevitably. So Chana knows this, and Miriam's going to read the daf in a minute, but keep in mind that, again, if she's accused of this publicly and then it turns out she's innocent, she gets a son, which is the thing she's been praying for.
This is Brachot 31b10. What was Chana threatening? She said, I will go and seclude myself with another man before Elkanah my husband. So some other man before Elkanah my husband. Since I was secluded, they will force me to drink the sota water to determine whether or not I have committed adultery, which she wasn't, but I will be found innocent. And since you will not make your Torah false, I will have children. I will bear children. So she's basically saying to God, look, here's the deal. You either give me a child, or this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to force your hand. I'm going to go seclude myself with a man who is not my husband, which is illegal. And then when everyone's like, oh my God, she did adultery. She didn't, but they're going to bring her to do the Sota ritual. It's going to say, oh no, she was innocent actually after all, innocent of all charges. And God will have to give her a child in order to make the Torah not false. She's daring God. She's daring God to do this. So we are fully manipulating God now, and I see absolutely nothing wrong with that. In fact, respect.
Okay, so that's what we see about Chana in the Gemara itself and what the rabbis try to learn from her. I suggested this as something we could learn together because her prayer, part of the text from the Tanach itself, shows up at the very beginning of a lot of Sephardi and Mizrahi Sidurim. So those are prayer books from the traditional Jewish communities of Southern Europe, North Africa, and West Asia. And one of the ways to warm up for prayer in the morning is to focus on Chana. I remember, Miriam, when you and I were first talking, you said, like, oh, I didn't realize that she was part of that morning prayer. And part of what we like to do at Ammud is be like, oh, there's actually like treasure in all of the different Jewish wisdoms that are out there that can be lifted up. And it's really important to note that like nusach, like the way of praying, is not a closed practice. So anyone who wanted to start their morning by thinking about this badass story about this woman who talks back to the priest and attempts to manipulate God, and you want that to be your inspiration for your spiritual start to the day, can totally take it. And I think where we're going to go from here is like we want to look at what did the rabbis learn from Chana? Like, why might they have put that in the Siddur? And also, like, again, what could we still learn from Chana that they didn't?
So we see the sages lifting up so much that Chana does, praying silently, moving your lips. All of these things are incorporated into Jewish prayer now. But there's a lot of things that don't quite get the emphasis later on from that Talmudic examination, but I think maybe should have. So a woman standing up for herself, literally standing up to the figurehead of a patriarchal system and telling him no and hush your face. That part is a little bit downplayed. We're not taking away from that. Stand up to authority when you know you are in the right and be like, no. That part is not as much gleaned from this text. I do think that we can make some fair guesses as to why a patriarchal system would not emphasize that as much as we would like. But I think that's the beauty of learning these texts, is that we can still take things away that we know to be important, even if they at the time did not see the relevance, or perhaps they didn't encourage looking at it in that lens. We are bringing our own lens to it.
When you open the Siddur that like comes from some of the communities I grew up in, you just see Chana's prayer there, and it doesn't say, and therefore, like, keep this in your mind as you go through the day. And I actually think there's like an opportunity in that blank to kind of fill in what we want to, right? Like, if somebody watching this is a Jewish person who like gets up in the morning and does some sort of tefillah, some sort of prayer, and you want to focus on Chana, and then the thing you want to think to yourself is, and Chana talked back to the men in charge, and Chana invented her own ways of prayer, and Chana was even willing to manipulate God into getting what she wants. Actually, like, there's the space for it. Like, there's no, you have to learn this from her and you can't learn this from her. And that's another reason to like lift these extra lessons up. And for me, what I'm taking away is one, like, when I teach people who want to know these traditional postures, let's say, of Jewish prayer, like holding your body in a certain way, whispering in a certain way. It's awesome to emphasize that those came from Chana, and that, you know, a woman in an act of sort of desperate creativity came up with those things that we still do to this day. And then also, I want there to be more. Like, I want people to also pray and learn the lessons that the Gemara mentions, but don't, like, the rabbis don't fully highlight. That she invented this prayer, and along the way, like, really stood up for herself against the patriarchal system, and we have this core record of it in the Tanach.
Sass, thank you so much for learning this with me and bringing your perspective, so I understand this text a little better, and I have a lot more appreciation for Chana than I think I did at the beginning of this session, which just goes to show, even when you're familiar with a text and with a biblical person like a prophet like Chana, there is so much more one can gather and learn. So thank you so much, and tell us a little bit about your work with Ammud.
Yeah, thanks for letting me learn with you. Also, I learned plenty, and letting me represent Ammud here. At Ammud, we support Jews of color studying the depth of Torah in comfortable affinity space, empowering multiracial Jews to learn, lead, and belong in Jewish community. Jews of color who are watching can become members at ammud.org, and folks who are not Jews of color can join the Ally Circle, also at ammud.org. And go ahead and follow us at JOC Torah Academy.
Everybody go follow Ammud. They are tagged in this post. They are wonderful. I really support and encourage anybody who wants to learn with them to please be in touch with them. And again, thank you so much, Sass, for teaching me and learning with me today.
Thanks, Miriam.